Sorry,
3 minutes.
Just
3
blame
minutes.
the producer.
Yeah, no, we're
For
good.
the
We're
problem.
good. Hey, it is, Conley, we're getting closer, guys. I think we are, 53 days away from the start of college
53
football
days.
season. 53 days, and we got a great show. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, is going to kick off batting in the leadoff position today. Johnny Ballpark Franks up in Nashville, hosts a show on the Ump in Huntsville on Mondays. Man has interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than anybody alive, and over 14,000 interviews total.
More than Buddy Martin?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's interviewed everybody that won the Heisman, just about every one of them.
That's cool.
And he's got an incredible archive. So, hey, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Hit allow notifications on Androids and iPhones because we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. But get pen and paper handy because Connor O'Gara will have the pulpit when we come back.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Connor, we were talking before the show, obviously college football, there's 53 days till we start this thing, if anybody's keeping track, and that's about 1,372 hours, but I am keeping track. I know you are too. There's so many storylines that you can go with, and sort of it's the old take it and drink of water from a fire hydrant with all the possibilities. But what's really catching your attention right now in the SEC? Everybody knows Texas and OU are coming in. It's been 12 years since we had some new kids sit at the lunch table, but what are you thinking about?
Those two teams, you can't not. I mean, think about all the acquisitions the SEC has had over the years, and with all due respect to programs like Texas A&M and Missouri and Arkansas and South Carolina, this is different. This is different to have two premier, unquestionably top 10 programs nationally in terms of passion, in terms of history. To have those two teams stepping into the SEC, we're talking about it so much because it's a really big deal. And what is it going to look like from a cultural standpoint? Or is Oklahoma going to be able to build up that offensive line and hang with the SEC? Is Texas actually back, or was 2023 just a one-off? Like all these things that we're talking about, you know what, at a time in which there's so much uncertainty in college football, what the future holds, it is kind of fun to be talking about the new blood and the new rivalries that are going to form, and the way that we now have to talk about Texas and Oklahoma as one of the SEC's own. I think it's a fantastic way for those of us in the content game who like to be able to talk about these things 365 days out of the year.
Yeah, and you look at Texas, and Philip Marshall was on with us Friday talking about it. And since 1996, they won the Big 12 4 times, Oklahoma 14. Go over the last 14 years, Texas 2 double-digit win seasons, Oklahoma 11. But as we come in today, Texas looks like they have the upper hand in terms of being ready because Oklahoma's got to replace all 5 starters on the offensive line. But that quarterback they're bringing in, Jackson Arnold, I think is the highest rated player they've ever signed on offense in school history. And that's a pretty strong list.
Jackson Arnold is going to become a household name in the SEC very, very soon. And it's telling that Oklahoma is bringing him to SEC Media Days. If you talk to Oklahoma fans, I think a lot of people on the outside would be surprised at how confident they are in the offense. Because when you lose Jeff Lebby, who takes the head coaching job at Mississippi State, and you lose Dylan Gabriel to the transfer portal, he's off to Oregon, where he could become the all-time career FBS leader in touchdown passes by season's end. You lose those guys, and you would think, oh, man, massive question marks across the board. And like, no. We're going to be just fine with Jackson Arnold. Seth Luttrell, somebody that shouldn't have been fired at North Texas, is now taking over this offense. He has the ability to kind of do what Mike Bobo did last year, where he comes back to his alma mater, takes an analyst role, learns under the OC, learns kind of some of the new ways, and now, boom, he's ready for this type of role. So I think Oklahoma's offense has so much potential. And yes, the big question is that offensive line, but at the same time, man, like they have so many of these exciting pieces around it. And defensively, that's going to be the biggest difference. It's a year 3 Brent Venables defense. We talked about his units at Clemson during the 2010s so much and gave them so much respect because the job that he does recruiting and developing talent is second to none. It's why he got that extension after just 2 years when a lot of people are like, what's he done so far? But I do think that Oklahoma has the ability to kind of surprise people in the SEC with a very, very difficult year 1 schedule.
Yeah, I mean, you look at linebacker Danny Stutzman, over 100 tackles the last 2 years. You look at Bowman, that safety. They've got Oklahoma. Growing up in Memphis, I mean, you cannot help. I've followed Oklahoma football all my life, and obviously I'm an Auburn grad, but had a friend whose father was an All-American out at Oklahoma, Buddy Leak. You think about 52 backfield. They're the only school that has 4 coaches in their history that have all won 100 or more games. Oklahoma. That's pretty strong. Looking at Texas, and I've got a lot, but when you think about Quinn Ewers, I think he's missed 5 games because of injuries the last 2 years. Everybody talks about Arch Manning. I'm sure that pushes Quinn Ewers, but what school has a quarterback room like that in America?
It's difficult to kind of evaluate that because I love the spring that Arch Manning had, and not just the spring game. But if you were paying attention to the comments that Steve Sarkisian made, he talked about how much his progressions have really grown and how this is somebody that has become a lot more comfortable after Malik Murphy transfers to Duke really at the start of December during that first portal window, and he wasn't there with them. And then Arch starts preparing like a backup, and he's been ready to go. And so you see the confirmation bias obviously come to fruition in the spring game. But yeah, there are not a lot of programs across college football that feel like they can say that. Now, you could probably find a couple of different spots where they feel really good about their backup. I think Ohio State fans are feeling like, all right, we think Will Howard is going to be the guy, but even if he's not, Devin Browne, don't look too far into what happened in the Cotton Bowl. Like they feel really good about the spot that he's in. And then what about Alabama? I mean, Alabama is the program that at this time last year, it's, oh my gosh, the quarterback room, guys, this is really, really rough. This is a disaster. And then Jalen Milroe is coming back as the guy who finished higher in the Heisman Trophy voting than anybody in all of college football. Ty Simpson has taken a lot of those steps with this new offense with Kalen DeBoer that makes people feel like, wow, Alabama actually be set up really well. And the only other one that comes to mind with a team that feels just excited and giddy about their backup is Florida. I mean, I was asked the question, gosh, I can't remember how it was phrased, but it was, would I take DJ Lagway for the rest of his career over like any current SEC quarterback? And I think I went with Lagway. Like, if you just told me like I get to keep Lagway for these next 3-4 years, I mean, like you talk about a guy that looks the part, that I understand he's not going to be in that QB1 role because of the season that Graham Mertz had and all that. But at the same time, I look at DJ Lagway and I'm like, I cannot wait to see that guy spin it. And I hope that the package for him comes as advertised, and all the things I've been hearing about his role in this offense will actually play out this year.
Did you ever, Connor? Hi, I'm Brenden Martin. Sorry, I was trying to fix the social media. I obviously I live in Gainesville, and I have we're all in business together, and we have Gatorbait Media, or Gatorbait Magazine, Buddy Martin and Franz Beard, those guys. So we obviously cover University of Florida quite a bit. But did you watch Lagway on Twitter over the years? Just like he would post these clips when he was working out or whatever, and like it was just watching progression. Someone brought it up to me the other day, and they showed like last 2 years from high school, just some of the stuff that he would do, what we'd see in games, and how he'd roll out to his left and throw to his right, and and he just seems to have like all the things, right? And I don't know if you're Billy Napier, how you don't really be chomping at the bit there to get him in on these third down, second down packages, and spread out these defenses. What do you see Lagway's role this year if you're Billy Napier at Florida?
I think that they're going to have some spots where they bring him in for deep ball scenarios, and maybe even on some of those like random 3rd and 18s. And I think you have to be careful about that, because then it takes your quarterback out of the rhythm of the game. If it's, one of those tough spots, what are you really saying about him? It's kind of tough to develop go-to receivers if that's what you're doing every time. But there will be a package for him. There simply has to be. And you see some of the throws that he made, like the throw that he made in the spring game where he split the safeties over the top, and it was just like chef's kiss. And you're reminded, like, this is an 18-year-old kid, and he just made a throw that I don't think I've seen a Florida quarterback make since Felipe Franks. And with all due respect to Felipe, who had a cannon for an arm. I mean, that arm got him drafted.
Standing still had a cannon.
There's unbelievable things that Felipe could do, throwing anything really, baseball included. Yeah. DJ has this ability to build on that and do things that, look, Graham Mertz is not capable of. And when I saw DJ Lagway on that field for the first time, because you really don't know how big someone is until they're surrounded by those other bodies. You can see
when you got to get on the sidelines, because I go down and shoot video and pictures. You got to get down on that level. When you get down there, especially in the SEC, when you get down there, you see the difference. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're so right. It's a great point.
And it's so telling to me that he's already at that place. And that's what makes him that much more intriguing, because like a lot of these guys come in, like Arch wasn't ready as a true freshman to step in. Like if he would have gotten in for significant reps, you'd have been like, man, he hasn't been through the strength program. DJ Lagway doesn't need a strength program. All right. That dude is ready to go. Gatorade National Player of the Year. I have zero doubt whatsoever that he's going to be able to take an SEC hit. And who knows if that time is going to come. I think that it's kind of a bittersweet thing, because Florida fans want to go to bat for Graham Mertz, and he exceeded my expectations without a doubt. But when you have a guy like this waiting in the wings, man, it's hard not to see what's out there.
And he may get hurt. I mean, that's how it goes. Anything can happen, especially in the SEC football 2024 drama scape. So I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting point what you made. But when you see him down there and you see kind of what he can do. Who would we had on? JD Pickell, Rob.
JD Pickell, from On 3.
Yeah. He was just talking about, he made the comparison. He's like, well, we were talking about Billy Napier. How is he going to handle, dealing with a package with Lagway? And Pickell was like, he didn't do so great with AR when he had, sort of that sort of a talent. How do you see Billy Napier stacking up this year, calling the plays? Making that, I know he's got code this and code that and all that stuff, but his big bang this year was like, are you going to get an OC? He didn't go get an OC. He says he's going to make the plays. Do you have an opinion about that, or is that not something you cover as close?
I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate it. To me, it's not just about whether or not you can call plays. It's about being the CEO of a program at a time when it's super difficult to be the CEO of a program. And when you have the errors that Florida had last year, where you're sending 2 number 3s onto the field and you're having, too many guys out there in special teams and whatnot, and like all these mental errors that just should not happen. To me, that comes back to the head coach. And that comes back to, all right, what are you spending your time on? What are you focusing too much on? And I look at last year, and that was a very popular topic of discussion at this time with Mizzou, with Eli Drinkowitz, who went out and got Kirby Moore. And that's the difference last year. That brought that offense together. We did an SEC offensive coordinator draft. I took Kirby Moore 1-1. I took him with the first overall pick. I was like, I think that guy is a star. I loved what their offense did. And I love that Drink was willing to say, I'm not as good as I thought I was at this. I need to hire somebody else. Even Jimbo Fisher, the most stubborn of coaches there possibly is in this sport, was like, yeah, you know what? I need to hire an offensive play caller. And people are like, oh, well, it didn't work. They improved by 11 points per game, and they had 3 different guys start multiple games with Bobby Petrino. It absolutely worked, and Bobby Petrino would say that Jimbo had a little bit too much, mixing of too much influence on the offense, which I get. That's what Bobby Petrino is going to say. But I'm a believer that you need to be able to delegate. It's the same reason why Kalen DeBoer did that and was like, Nick Sheridan's going to be my play caller. Same reason why Lane Kiffin has Charlie Weiss Jr. as his primary play caller. Josh Heupel has a primary play caller, and they oversee the offense. And it's frustrating to me if I'm a Florida fan that Billy Napier doesn't recognize that.
Well, you look at
Great
Gus
point.
Malzahn, Exhibit A, B, C. It doesn't work. You can't find an example of sharing. You know, in the business world, you have a CEO, you have a CFO, and you have a COO. Well, that CFO looks at the books. That's the CEO's like, I know a lot, but I don't know. I can't do everything. That's where they get in trouble.
Guys, look at Ryan Day. Ryan Day
right.
goes out and gets Chip Kelly because he needs to be
That ain't a bad.
Oh, you know what? That's a great point. I didn't even think
is a-
about
yeah.
that. Damn, that's a great point. It's so true, though. It's
He's
so
one of the
true.
best.
We had, I made this a point 1,000 times, and I'll make it 1,000 times more. I asked Urban Meyer point blank, "Do you win your natties without Dan Mullen?" He says, "No way." He
No
tells
way.
us, "No way." He
Yeah.
says, "You gotta have," and we even talked about the Missouri Florida game last year. He's like, "That's a great example." He's like, "That's where you don't." Dan Mullen gets on my headset. He says, we go for a touchdown at the end of the game. Our defense isn't that great. We got to play to win here. And he's like, just examples like that where you make different decisions. He's like, when you're on the field, you just don't see it like you see it in the booth.
Yeah, and like the moments that came up last year where you're like, all right, why isn't Trevor Etienne getting the football more? Like, why have they not just said, oh, we're just gonna target Trey Wilson for the entire second half? Like, we don't care. We're just gonna do that. That's what an offensive-minded head coach who doesn't have to worry about his next play call, his next 3 play calls. That's what an offensive-minded head coach can still bring to the table. Hey, we need to make sure we get this guy touches. So I'm seeing a mismatch out there. We need to go out and attack this. And then that's why you can oversee those play calling duties and be like, all right, we have mismatches here that we need to be able to kind of capitalize on.
Mhm.
And that to me is an area that Florida could be good at. It really could be, but it takes delegating and it takes kind of seeing that. And right now that is not the case.
All right, I want to switch now, and I agree. You've got to have other people around you, and you have to be willing to listen to them and give them authority. That's, people love to work for people who give them the ability to do their job. No one likes to be pencil whipped and micromanaged, and I think that's a great point both of y'all just made. Now with LSU, Brian Kelly, he's won 10 games or more, 7 straight years. That's the most of anybody in college football. Win-wise, he's going to end up passing Nick Saban, but he's not Nick Saban. Obviously, he doesn't have a single national championship yet. He's got to get 7 just to tie Nick Saban. What about LSU? I hate to say they wasted a generational offense last year with Jaden Daniels, but Matt House was god-awful as a defensive coordinator. They go hire the guy from Missouri,
Blake Baker.
Blake Beck, and I think I may have been wrong, but let's talk about the Tigers. And Bo Davis is coaching that defensive line. That's why Texas, I think, might lose 3 this year. He was that big of a factor.
I do think that Bo Davis was a huge factor, and Murphy and Sweat, those guys on the defensive line, that's kind of what changed Texas's defense, and it's going to be a big question for them. I actually have Texas going 12-0 to start and getting to the SEC championship, and basically having a spot in the college football playoff locked up before they even get to Atlanta. But the way that LSU approached this defensively is exactly what you could have hoped for if you were an LSU fan who was forced to watch that defense last year. The way that Brian Kelly went about those staff changes kind of made you think, oh, man, he's going to run it back with this. This is a stubborn coach. He's making a mistake. Waits till after the bowl game and says, no, we're cleaning house. That was unacceptable. We did just waste a generational season from Jaden Daniels because we had a defense that was so wildly inept and guys were in the wrong spots. I mean, the Harold Perkins thing, that played out before everybody's eyes last year and the misuse of him. And that was a very frustrating topic. And you look at the hires that he made, and you can't help but feel optimistic. I love the job that Blake Baker did at Mizzou, the 2 years that he spent there. I mean, Mizzou just had 5 players selected in the NFL draft on the defensive side of the ball. That's crazy. For the unit that they had.
For them?
That's unbelievable. Like
for anybody.
Yeah, but I mean, especially for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Alabama will look at that and be like, yeah, that's a really good year.
Right.
They had more defensive players drafted than Georgia last year.
That's crazy.
Let's think about that. So that's Blake Baker. That's Kevin Peoples. And Kevin Peoples is coming in to kind of be that guy who's going to pair well with Bo Davis.
Right.
And you'd think, okay, you bring in those two guys, you have to be able to get better pressure up front. But then you kind of look at the personnel and you're still going, they might be put in better spots. I don't know if they have those dudes yet. And that's the
Right.
tough thing after
Yeah.
the Mason Smith thing, the way that played out with him. Unfortunately, not being the player that some hoped he was going to be, myself included, coming off of injury.
Yeah.
He goes to the NFL, and then they're like, hey, we're not going to pay Dominic Williams what he's asking for, and Oklahoma ultimately does to be able to beef up their defensive line when he was coming out of TCU in the post spring window. So yeah, I have questions about LSU, and they're still on the defensive side of the ball, despite the fact that I love the offseason hires, and I feel like the secondary should be better after a lot of those guys got experience. But I'm still scratching my head, going, man, I don't know if they're going to be at the level that you need to be able to make the college football playoff. You can have a mediocre defense and go 10-2, but at the same time, I don't know that they're able to overcome that and have that consistency offensively in the same way that they did last year.
Well, I think when Chip Kelly was at Oregon and Nick Aliotti was his defensive coordinator, I remember before they played Auburn, they could get the ball, they could make a play in like 9.5 seconds or under 10 seconds. And Aliotti said the days of the shutdown defenses are pretty much over. And you look at that game, they didn't have the people on the line of scrimmage. They were averaging 315 yards a game rushing with DJ James out of Texarkana, all-time leading rusher, 315 yards a game. And Auburn with a generationally bad, top 5 worst defenses in school history, shut them down to 75 yards rushing. Nick Fairley helped. So did Josh Bynes out of Lauderdale Lakes Boyd Anderson High School. But I think about this, man, you're making so many great points. I'm like a 9-year-old kid waiting for that 10-speed Christmas morning. I'm hearing you talk about this. I got to ask you about Missouri.
Scooters, man. It's scooters now. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I'm girl dad. He's dad. Scooters, bro.
Well, I tell you what, I just like riding a bike. But I want to go back up to Missouri with Brady Cook and Luther Burden III. This guy is a special talent. Why? I know it's Missouri. That's why. That's why. I live in Memphis. People forget about them, but they're putting $250 million into renovating one end zone alone. They've got money up there.
This is what you have been hoping for if you're a Missouri fan. This is the ideal scenario, the way that this played out, with having that early 2010s type season that nobody sees coming, because quite frankly, Mizzou didn't give us a reason to see that type of season coming. And to go 11-2 with the losses that they had, where look, they should have beat LSU at home. That game was sitting right there. And the Georgia game, Georgia still deserved to win that game, but they played Georgia extremely tough down to the wire. Look, that Mizzou team last year, man, I don't know that we're going to remember them as like one of the great SEC teams of the playoff era, of the 4-team era, or anything like that. But for what they did to transform expectations heading into the 12-team playoff era was incredibly important. Right. And now my question is, all right, well, what can you do with a schedule that is more favorable than last year's, and you have these expectations? That's going to be the big question, because I mentioned those concerns I have on the defensive side of the ball. Offensive side of the ball, no. I don't have those concerns. They bring in 2,000-yard rushers from the group of 5 level to replace Cody Schrader. Yeah, maybe got a couple questions on the offensive line, but your passing game should be one of the best in the country, with a guy who, look, I think Luther Burden III is the best returning player in the SEC, one of the best returning players in all of college football. Yeah. You should feel confident if you're Mizzou, the way that this sets up. It doesn't mean it's a given, though. It doesn't mean it's a given. And I do wonder if they struggle in some of these winnable games and those expectations come just a tiny bit short this year.
Sorry, Rob. I just want to ask about going forward in a place, and this is a bigger conversation. I'm not trying to bring it up. I'm just saying, because we talk about it all the damn time, but it's like going forward is like, do you see places like Mizzou, Missouri, like this, in my opinion, they really benefit from NIL, and they benefit from a transfer portal, the new college football landscape. Because there's no draw. I mean, I live in Ocala, right? It's like Gainesville. It's like everything that around, like what you don't have, like a lot of pro sports. You don't have a lot of things that fan base is going to draw from. You get a lot. It just seems like they're going to be able to draw the big money in their state, and the better they get, the more that's just going to feed it. How do you see that playing out in places like Missouri and the SEC?
You know what's interesting is if you think of Mizzou and when they've been at their best, it's been these diamond in the rough type players from the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been the Luther Burdens of the world, who are these, local kids, the big
Yeah.
5-star type guys, the Dorial Green Beckhams of the world. They haven't necessarily been those big time blue chip recruits, and they're recruiting better than they did during any of those times when they were doing great things with Chase Daniel, 2007, and doing things in the Big 12 and being a team that was just brutal to play against every year because of the type of offense that they ran.
Yeah.
And it's a different model that they're trying to go after now because of the NIL law that they enforced in that state, which states you can collect on NIL if you commit to an in-state school.
Mhm.
And so they're trying to be able to break through and do it that way. And I credit them because it's not easy, and you have to find some sort of advantage like that. I think, the state of Texas, I think is now capable of doing stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
But
they
they're
are.
looking for those advantages to make sure, look, we can't have a big city like this in this area and have kids leaving. Now they're still going to go into the state of Texas because that's just what Mizzou football has always done.
Yeah.
And I still think that they're going to get those types of guys, the Nick Boltons of the world, but it's still going to be, all right, can you sustain this? And can you sustain this even if Kirby Moore leaves? And even if, now Blake Baker's gone, can you be a program that is able to just kind of keep things moving regardless of what type of assistant turnover you have? That's the question that I still have with Mizzou, but I love the approach. And I think they've done everything to be able to kind of set themselves up.
Well, Gary Pinkel, 2007, 1 versus 2 versus Mark Mangino in Kansas in the border war. Of the 11 starters on offense for Missouri that year, 10 were in-state kids. The only out-of-state kid was a Texas guy, Chase Daniel, the quarterback. So, and you think about historically that East St. Louis football program, how big they were. That was a superpower. That was like Moss Point, Mississippi, or Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale. That was powerful. Okay, one more question. I know you got to go, and thank you so much, and let people know how they can follow you. And if you could give us a retweet, we really appreciate it. But best case scenario, as quickly as you can for Arkansas with Bobby Petrino there, because everybody, Hog fans all say, Browne, we all love Sam Pittman, but we're tired of having the coach everybody loves. We want the one everybody's afraid of.
Best case scenario, I think it's 7-5. I think it's 7-5. I think it's Taylor Green working after coming in from Boise State, cutting down on those mistakes. Bobby Petrino showing that he still got it. Luke has their stud young tight end staying healthy. These big-bodied receivers providing a nice safety blanket. Improvement on the offensive line with Sam Pittman having more control over that group and being a little bit more hands-on with them than he was last year with Dan Enos as the OC. It's this defense taking another step with Travis Williams, who passed a lot of those, pretty paltry expectations after Barry Odom had a disastrous group in 2022.
Yeah.
And I think getting to 7-5 is still going to be difficult. The schedule is so tough. I would hate to be Sam Pittman at 2-4 going into that first bye if their only wins are against UAB and Arkansas Pine Bluff, and they get smoked by, the Oklahoma States and the Tennessees. And like, if that happens, that's bad news bears for Sam Pittman's future.
Bad news bears.
Oh,
yeah.
That would be. And I think Sam Pittman's the most likable coach in college football. I do. I root for his success. But it's difficult to foresee a path to 7-5, even as a best case scenario, knowing the questions that we still have on the offensive side of the ball, knowing how tough that schedule is going to be. The only saving grace is that if they can get to that bye week at like 3-3, it's a very nice home schedule that they have coming up, and they can beat some of those teams that maybe they're not supposed to. That changes everything, but it's got to be Taylor Green working with Bobby Petrino.
Hey, real quick before you go, Florida. What do you think Florida's going to do this year?
6-6.
Wow.
6-6.
6-6 would be,
and good. It's how they fight.
But 6-6 is a good.
But beating LSU, and ending that losing streak, which God, I can't believe that I saw I was there the last time that Florida beat LSU, the Joe Burrow pick 6, which I still to this day tell people that is the loudest moment I have ever heard in a college football stadium was that pick 6 to end the game. They haven't beat them since then, but I think this year LSU does have some areas that you can probably expose, and this Florida offense, as long as Billy Napier doesn't run this thing into the ground and overthink this, man, I would think that they have some areas to expose the LSU defense.
Awesome.
Hey, Connor, let people know how they can follow you. It is so much fun having you on here. You are You are such a credit to True Grit Journalism. Appreciate all the work. You work your ass off. I know you do. I watch you at Media Days. Look forward. Brenden and I.
Oh yeah, you're
going
to be at Media Days, right?
Yeah,
We'll be there.
Well, maybe we'll have a couple of road
we're
sodas
roommates.
with you.
It's going to be nuts. We got to hang
Yeah,
out.
my wife. I said, just stay with me, my producer. Why not? It's more convenient. You got him right there. But let them know how they can follow you and have a safe trip. And you're a great dad and great American. We love you having me.
Yeah, appreciate that, guys. SaturdayDownSouth.com. We have tons and tons of coverage that we're going to be rolling out for Media Days. I'm going to do something for tomorrow on like the 5 guys that I wish were going to be at SEC Media Days, player representatives who won't be there. But it's going to be a fun week in Dallas, and I'm really looking forward to it. Saturday Down South podcast. We're twice a week. We come out every Tuesday and Friday. Just had an episode drop today with our guy Josh Sneed over at SEC Shorts, who does great work.
Yeah,
Lots of fun content, interviews, and stuff like that we try and produce, 365 days a year. So really appreciate the kind words and looking forward to seeing both of you guys.
All right,
Thanks,
man.
Connor.
Have a great one. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
All right,
Gentlemen.
let me say something real quick before we bring Johnny Ballpark Franks in. Coolmore Logistics and Transportation. You got to get the hat right. Anything that you need shipped, whether it's lumber, steel coils, seed, cotton, any products, full, less than truckload, full vans, containers. They are Memphis-based with a global reach. Check out the QR code right there.
Can they ship me to SEC Media Days?
They could ship you to SEC
I was just
Media,
watching a YouTube show the other day where a guy shipped himself across the country, but that's another story.
Yeah, it is another story. But I mean, they can ship anything. Bottom line, here's the deal: guy down in, let's say, Atlanta needs something shipped to Las Vegas. And dancing girls, perhaps, whatever.
Rob's got to ship me something in Vegas.
That's right. And they say they call Coolmore Logistics and say, hey, we got to get something here. They post it, and within seconds, their phone blows up and they get it moved. Also,
it's like Uber almost in a lot of ways because you throw it up there and then you go. These companies have been around for a long time, but these guys are the best. They've perfected it.
Yeah, and let me tell you what, nobody's going to outwork Robert Weaver, John Dicken, and all the crowd over there. I love what they're doing. We hear a lot about, young people aren't working hard. Nobody's going to outwork Weaver. He works as hard as a dozen Mennonite farmers. That's what I like to give people as a true compliment. So follow them, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square. Lots of great stuff. And the next month, all the fall stuff is going to start coming in. And I also want to say Web-Footed Kennels up in Jonesboro, Arkansas. My man, Chris Aiken, I've known him about 30 years. He is the best dog trainer in America for your hunting dogs. He took a German wire hair. A friend of mine sent him up there recently and has got that dog doing 200-yard marks. Web-Footed Kennels, Jonesboro, Arkansas. Chris is not only a great trainer, he's a great husband and father. One of the best people that you will meet. Check him out. Proud to have them as a sponsor. They're sending us to Media Days, as is Ann Camp Lee, Rumble Boxing Gym in Memphis. I also want to say something else about another one of our sponsors, the great folks at Matei's Garage in Memphis and Cordova Automotive. Any car, truck, SUV, lawnmower, four-wheeler, if it's got a motor, they can fix it. The great people there. And look, let's get to Johnny Ballpark Franks, another great American, a Huntsvillian. That's what they are. They're Huntsville. Now, Johnny grew up in a house with, I think he has 4 or 5 sisters. They're all Auburn people. No. He's a Florida State guy. No, tell me the story. It's been a while since you've been on. We've missed you, damn it.
I have 2 brothers. They were Auburn fans. My dad, Auburn fans. My cousins, my aunts, everybody's Auburn fans. So my very first college game that I ever went to was 1973. Auburn was playing Oregon State. And this was back in the days at Legion Field, where Auburn would play the first game. They would clear the stadium, clear the parking lot, and then Alabama would play at night. So that particular night, Alabama kicked off the 73 season playing Cal, and they won 66-0. But they start making the announcements in the second half, about clearing the stadium. I'm thinking, I'm going to go try to hide somewhere. I'm 10. I'm going to try to hide somewhere and just stay in the stadium. I'll find a way home. But yeah, it's very intriguing days like that. So, by the way, I'm so excited to be with you guys. Brenden, I just want to say, your dad, I love your dad. A mentor in this business because I worked so many years inside sports. I started doing my talk show back in April of 2008 and always wanted to have a person to talk to me about every school. And that's how I got to know your dad.
Oh,
And
cool.
I've known him ever since. Had a nice conversation with him yesterday
Oh,
morning as
great.
well. And I think the world of Buddy Martin.
Well, that's cool. I think he's a pretty cool guy. This is actually Florida's first natty right here. This is right here down in Arizona.
I love it. I love
There
it.
you go. Johnny, I got to say this too. You talk about those double headers. You know, Dad's listening right now, and he's 95. He used to go to Crump Stadium in Memphis. They'd have a double header. Memphis would be playing, say, Ole Miss, and then the
Right.
night game would be Tennessee and Mississippi State. Think
Right.
about that, man. They'd have to go clear the theater out. You know, you'd be hiding under the seats. But Johnny's one. Let me tell y'all something about Johnny. He is one of the great storytellers. Over 14,000 interviews. And is it fair to say you've interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than anyone in the history of the world?
I will say that's true, mainly because forget about. I mean, it's so easy to get the latest guys, and even the guys from the '90s. I was fortunate enough, when COVID shut down the sports world in 2020, back in March of that year. I
Yeah.
was thinking, what are we going to talk about? I was reduced to a 2-hour show, thank goodness. And then I was thinking, okay, how do I fill that time? And so I was looking for individuals to be motivational, inspirational. And so for the 3 days leading into the weekend, if you remember the SEC basketball tournament, they played those early games on that first night, on that Wednesday.
Yeah.
But then when the NBA shut the season down, they shut down the tournament, and then college basketball shut down, baseball shut down, everything shut down. So I was thinking, okay, how am I going to fill these 3 days going into the weekend, get to the weekend, and then I'll regroup. Well, I used my contact list, and so it just so happens for 4 days in a row, I had a Heisman winner on, but that was it. That was the only Heisman winners that I knew. So I get to the weekend, I'm thinking, this is interesting. I'm kind of like challenging myself. I want to see how many consecutive days I can get a Heisman winner. And so I was able to find Paul Hornung up in Louisville 3 months before he passed away. He came on. I was able to track down 95-year-old Johnny Lujack. He came on this show. I also reached out to Phil Necro, the Hall of Famer, and unfortunately, he passed away 4 months later. But one of the cool things about the sports world, and I even have a story about this from yesterday, because yesterday I had a chance for the first time ever to have Steve Spurrier on my show.
Wow.
And so we go
God.
back, and after Johnny Lujack had been on the show, Phil Necro had come on, and Phil and I have known each other since I worked in baseball in the 80s. And so Phil reached out to me the next day, and he was like a little kid in a candy store. Now, think about when you were 14 or 15 and you had a chance to meet whatever player that was, your idol.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking to an 81-year-old Phil Necro whose biggest idol ever, and he never had a chance to meet him, was Johnny Lujack. And so I hooked up, and Phil Necro's wife, after Phil passed away, I reached out to her and sending my condolences. And she told me Phil was able to reach out and have a conversation with his idol, Johnny Lujack. And that's the coolest thing about sports. I love that. And to me, it's like a gift. And I love giving gifts to my guest, telling them things about themselves they didn't know.
Mhm.
Like when I'm doing research, as the old, I worked with a lot of bad teams and great teams too, championship teams. But when you're in sports information, I was associate athletics director at Tennessee State in sports information. Sometimes we had teams that were bad, right? So
Yeah.
I would play, you can make numbers. I can take negative numbers and turn them into positives by just obscure stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that it's obscure and it doesn't make a difference. Like if your games are on television, TV people love those weird notes. And so it almost looked like when we were on national broadcast, when our schools would play men's basketball games on national television on ESPN, it almost looked like a home broadcast because I knew my notes were the kind of notes that producers love to throw it on down below on the screen. But it's just interesting, like yesterday, I think was 4,104, 14,000 plus guests. And yesterday I had the pleasure of having Richard Todd, who was a part of the 73 Alabama national championship team. And the strange thing with Richard, he was booed a lot. I'm a Jets fan because of Namath, and so I was a Richard Todd fan too. But he was booed a lot because he threw some picks. He did lead the Jets along with the New York Sack Exchange to the AFC Championship game in '82. They lose to Miami 14-0. But Richard, he was drafted in the first round. Remember, Alabama was running a wishbone.
Yeah.
He was drafted in the first round by the Jets. He was being told he was going to be a 4th-round draft pick. He was drafted in the first round in '76. How many years did Alabama have to wait until their next quarterback was taken in the first round? I mean, look at all the quarterbacks now that have played under Nick Saban for Alabama, right? That are in the NFL.
42 years?
44 years, 76 to 2020. That's how many years in between Alabama's first-round draft picks as far as quarterbacks.
Well, Johnny, that's what's really cool when you think about the quarterbacks. Bart Starr was a 17th round pick.
Wow.
And
he got benched. He got benched his senior year because they had a youth movement at Alabama.
Yeah. And
think about that. A guy that's
crazy.
5 crowns NFL. He gets benched at Alabama because let's go with the young guys.
And his girlfriend was in school at Auburn, and they got married secretly. And the only way they found out, she was at home one time during the summer, and her parents got a marriage certificate license in the mail and said, "What's this?" She goes, "Oh, okay. Bart and I have been married." But I tell you the historical part of it. You think about Richard Todd was from Mobile, down in that area.
Right, right.
And
Davidson High School.
Yeah, and you look at all the – my God, I love this from Maury Gaston. Auburn won that Oregon State game 14-7, and my dad told me it would be a long season. It was between 2 good seasons. Yeah, 72, the Amazons, and 74, both Gator Bowl winners. Back when the Gator Bowl was like a Super 6 Bowl today, the Gator Bowl was the bomb diggity. I remember when I was a little kid, my 2 sisters and I just prank called people out of the phone book asking them who we thought would win that game. And Auburn ended up winning against a Colorado team, heavily favored 24-3.
Remember
Johnny,
that.
I got to meet Paul Horning one time. He came to work where I was one day on the trading floor, and the message he gave was so cool. He said, "Look, just last thing I'm going to tell y'all before I leave. Before you get ready to go home, think about those people that you saw early this morning at 6 or 6:30 driving to the office. You can't get hold of them during the day, but call 5 or 10 of them before you leave here today. Do those little things." You think about the power. If let's say somebody's watching right now, we're blessed to have a lot of viewers, and they said, "I want to go to this treasure trove of Heisman Trophy interviews and other interviews that Johnny has."
Yeah.
What say you, as Bill O'Reilly would say?
I'm working on it. My goal, and I'm crazy. I've produced a lot of media guides, game programs. I mean, if you go to a football game or basketball game, you can buy a game program. My game programs were the best in a 5-state district for like 10 years, as far as at the FCS level. My media guides were top 10 media guides across the country. I've won awards for the best cover in the country for my media guides. So I've done huge publications. So when I had all these interviews, the biggest thing about writing a book is to do the research, which means do the interviews. And I've had hundreds of interviews with top 10 finishers. I've had all these interviews with winners, multiple winners, to the point where now when I have somebody on again that's been on before, like Mike Garrett and I have become friends. He was the first Heisman winner from USC, first Heisman winner to score a touchdown in a Super Bowl. He won it in '65 for USC, a big Kansas City Chief guy as well. And so when I had them on, again, I usually ask them about other Heisman winners. And so it gives me all that research. So I've done the research, right, on the winners. The biggest thing now is putting this all together. And the goal was to have it for the 90th anniversary, which is next year. Plus, I did the research. Well, if you're writing a book, you want people to read it. If you're writing anything, you want people to read it. So I did the research and found out that 100,000 plus libraries in the country. I'm looking at what books are out there on the Heisman and realize these libraries buy, they're not giving, you don't give books to the library. They buy these books. So I've already got a built-in market. I've got a national sponsor knowing that's out there like Nissan Heisman House. I'm thinking, what a great gift when you buy your new Nissan is to be able to give one of these books to the new owner of one of those Nissans. So I've already been thinking about it, thinking about how I would sell the book. The problem is this thing is going to be big as far as research and everything else, because I want the side stories. Like right now I'm working on, and I know it's a sensitive subject for the Manning family. I'm in touch with Archie Manning's people now. I'm trying to get him on the show. Doing side notes, like, for example, here's Archie, not once but twice top 10 finisher. His son, Peyton Manning, not once but twice a top 10 finisher. Eli Manning finished number 3. So all 3 guys, so dad, 2 sons were top 3 or better. Because remember, Peyton finished as a runner-up to Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
And so with that said, and now you got Arch. How cool would it be by the time this book comes out? Is now I'm looking at the 95th anniversary, or at this point, whenever I get it done, I'm going to throw it out there. Yeah. But how cool would it be if Arch finally gets to play and live up to the potential? And he doesn't have to win it, but be a top 10 finisher. So then you would have grandfather, the sons, and the grandson all being top 10 finishers for the Heisman. So those are the kind of side stories that I'm looking for.
That's the kind of stuff, and I would love. Charles Woodson had a 17-year career, a long career, just like Peyton did. And from all accounts I've ever heard, he's a stand-up guy. I see him on TV.
Super nice.
And he was a hell of a player, and 17 years in the NFL. Okay, look who it is.
Hi, Mr. Martin.
What's up, guy? How you doing?
I was bragging about you, buddy.
Oh, I heard I had to come on. If you were bragging, I want to hear it.
Yeah. By the way, I was talking to Steve Spurrier yesterday about your book. So, and the most interesting thing about Steve Spurrier, and look, I'll be the first one to say I'm to blame for this as well. When you think about the Mount Rushmore of college football coaches, you immediately go to Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, you throw out Eddie Robinson, and then you have maybe is it going to be Bobby Bowden, or is it going to be maybe a Joe Paterno? But you never hear Steve Spurrier. And when you look at what he accomplished, forget about it. And I think the biggest problem for Steve Spurrier, he wore the visor, but he came, and a lot of his successes happened before internet became huge. So we don't really have that. We don't have what he did at Duke, which you won at Duke. I mean, Wallace Wade won at Duke, but that was in the 30s, right? Yep, so you get Steve doing what he was able to get accomplished at Duke. Then you get Steve after the experience there with the Redskins. He coaches South Carolina. They had no, donors. When you have a program inside the SEC, you got to have those $1 million donors. He helped build that at South Carolina. And to the point, remember, he had a 4th place finish at South Carolina right prior to us going to the 4-team playoff. I don't think, after your book, buddy, and after all the research on Steve Spurrier, I'm a Florida State grad, right? I don't think Steve Spurrier gets enough credit. In fact, I asked him about that yesterday, and he says that's for others to decide. He comes off, and I've always looked at him as coming off as, I wouldn't say arrogant, but he certainly knows his worth as a coach. But he doesn't brag about himself. That's just one of the strangest things. Like, for example, Bear Bryant had an autobiography back in the early part of the 70s. And what's the name of the book? Ain't Nothing But a Winner. You don't really see Steve Spurrier doing that. He's letting others decide for him and for his case, his greatness.
I'm glad you're saying this, Johnny, because it's hard for me to say it because people know I'm so close with Steve, and it's a homer comment. One of the great things about doing this book was we got to drill down on things, and you got to measure greatness in many ways. The wins and losses certainly is part of that. Championships part of that. But here's what you have to do. What kind of change have they dictated in college football? I would argue maybe nobody, including Mary Bryant, changed the SEC as much as Steve Spurrier did.
Yeah.
When he came in 1990, it was a run league, play defense, etc. And he won right away. He gives full credit to the team who was there when he got there, and that there was a lot of talent. And think about this. He won 4 in a row. Not even Nick Saban
Right.
did that, right?
Yeah, only Nick won 3 in a row, but you got Steve winning 4 in a row.
Right. And he won 6. He says 7 because he
I know.
got the 1990 team. And even though that would be nice, he can't do that.
Right.
Giving
Why
them full
not?
credit.
See, I'm like you, Rob. Why not?
Why not? I mean, my goodness.
It's like when they try to take. It's like when they penalize and take wins away, but yet that family paid their $400 for their tickets, their Cokes, and their hot dogs. So that if they don't get refunded their money, you can't take W's away from coaches and find a different way to penalize them. Because for me, when I'm doing research and trying to put lists together, which I love to do, I don't want to all of a sudden, wait, I can't count those 10 here. I can't count those 8 there. I hate that. Find a different way to penalize these schools and these coaches. Do it financially because they hate losing money. Let me just say right now, they're not going to want to pay for a dinner or whatever. They don't want to lose the money.
Yeah.
I just hate it from my standpoint as a college football historian that I have to deal with that.
Yeah, good point. And I think the other thing is you think about the forward pass and what he did with the forward pass in the SEC. His impact on others has been amazing. He changed the SEC. Then later on, when he went back to his basic games, he ran the football a lot. He would get ahead by 3 touchdowns and run the ball the whole second half. People don't realize that.
And he would run up the score. And the bottom line is, if you're a defense, hey, you got to stop him. That's not his. He's got to give his players opportunities, and you're not going to pull back.
Exactly. Stop me if you don't like it. And the great thing about him is that he never apologized for it. He let his players play. And it did turn out to be intuitive because eventually those things affected the polls, how much you won by. Anyway, I think Steve is a national treasure.
Right.
A lot of people from Florida State have a great respect for Steve, even though they had some nasty battles.
Absolutely.
He and Bowden went at it pretty good. And Bowden got the better of their overall numbers.
8-5-1, baby. 8-5-1.
Oh yeah. And he'll give you this back, 52-20. Okay.
But look, not just that costing Florida State a national title there, which by the way, I hate, and I said it then, I said it when Alabama beat LSU in 2011. If you beat a team in the regular season, especially back then when there was not a 14 playoff, you should not have to see that team again. That 52-20 year Warwick Dunn gets injured, so he doesn't play the second half because it was a close game, 1-score game at halftime. But the fact that Florida State beat Florida in Tallahassee in the regular season, and then they turn around because of the upset in the Big 12 title game, Florida State had to play Florida again, and it's like that didn't work out well.
We can adjudicate this a lot of ways, Rob. We can talk about the late hits and all that stuff.
Hey, by the way, hey, Rob, I got one other thing too. A side note, Buddy probably knows the answer to this. We know about the shotgun, right? One of the formations that everybody uses a shotgun. Do you know where the shotgun originated?
Yeah, Red Hickey in L.A.
Thank you very much. Where did Steve Spurrier get drafted to? The San Francisco 49ers. John Brody, the former 49ers quarterback, he was the first guy to ever do the shotgun formation, and that's where Steve Spurrier was drafted. By the way, in the modern era of Florida Gator football, no player has been drafted higher than Steve Spurrier out of the Florida Gator history.
This year it came close. It
really did. Yeah.
I want to ask you on something, buddy. You might be able to verify this. You're talking about Steve Spurrier again. I don't know him. I met him a couple of years ago. When Steve Melnick introduced him at the Saban Legacy Award at the club up on the mountain in Birmingham, May of 22. I'll say this: what Auburn people have a lot of respect for Steve Spurrier, but I think David Housel, Sports Information Director Emeritus at Auburn and former athletic director, who is just a treasure. He wrote in a Auburn Football Illustrated program several years back. He said, Auburn people used to get madder than hell at Steve Spurrier, but let me say this, and I believe this is what it said. Pat Sullivan had a long battle with cancer before he died December 1st of 2019. But he wrote in there that his old friend Steve Spurrier hooked him up at the Shands Cancer Center in Gainesville, Florida.
Wow.
And he lived another 17 years. And you talk about that's power. I get chills thinking about that. And you think about Johnny Musso went over Friday afternoon and spent the day with his old friend Pat Sullivan there in Mountain Brook. And then Auburn beat Alabama 48-45 Saturday, and Sunday morning Pat passed away. And there's some big plans for an award for Pat Sullivan that'll be announced here soon that some people are going to do. But Steve Spurrier, just for that right there, I mean, everyone I know loves the guy. And you two have both met him and talked to him. But, hey, anytime he wants to come on this show, I'm going to push back about 3 feet from the mic and just let him go because I think Johnny, both of y'all get it.
You want to hear the
1 and 1
bizarre
equals
thing?
3.
You want to hear the bizarre thing? When my very first show, can't make this up, April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2008. And I wanted to have my first show coming out with a bang. So I had John Feinstein on, but my very first guest was Pat Sullivan, the 71 Heisman winner.
God.
And now if something happens and I don't do another show, because I'm only doing a weekly show now, I'm slowing down as far as the shows are concerned. But if something happens to me, and I hope that that's not the case between now and next Monday, my first guest, a Heisman winner, my last guest, a Heisman winner, and Steve Spurrier. And I'm okay with that.
There you go. I guess I got to run. Rob. I got to do moving out of the house today. But I want to say,
buddy, I love you to death. Thank you so much for over the years. You've been so important to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you are a treasure.
Thank you, Rob. I want to say one thing. By the way, Rob's on the show tonight. And the one thing I want to say about Pat Sullivan, I know that I remember that freshman team they had.
Yeah.
Because they had Sullivan to Beasley and they had Reeves Alvarez. You talk about two tandems there. And I told Shane Matthews this morning on his show, I do every Tuesday morning, pot up with Matthews, that we talk about great teams. And we naturally won the national championship team in 96, the SEC championship. But one of my very favorite teams was that Super Softs of 69 with Alvarez and Reeves and the play that famous bomb they hit against Houston. But those freshmen, I saw that game, that freshman game. They lit it up. I think it was like 59-53 or something. It's crazy. Terry Beasley was a terrific receiver. And, of course, also we know all about Pat Sullivan and what a great player he was.
Hey, buddy, before you leave, I got a question, Rob, for
Carlos
Buddy.
Right There's Carlos right there.
Yep.
Buddy, I got a quick question
Cuban
before
comet.
you leave. I know Florida State has a perfect season. I know Central Florida has a perfect season. I know the Hurricanes of Miami has a perfect season. When was Florida's last perfect season in football, buddy?
We don't count perfect seasons. We got championships down here. Okay?
Sorry, as a Florida State grad, I had to throw that in there because I've been bragging for.
Brenden, hold that picture back up again.
I've been bragging for
Carlos
30
Alvarez
minutes
against FSU.
I've been bragging for 30 minutes on Florida and Steve Spurrier. So as a Florida State grad, I have to throw the dig in there.
Yeah, well, we all get the first base of me, pal.
Buddy, I'm looking forward to tonight. I'll be on there at 9:19 Eastern on the Buddy Martin Show. Catch it Monday through Thursday nights, live, 9 p.m. Eastern, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. It's everywhere. It is a great show. Don't watch the news. Watch that show and listen to Johnny's show. We're going to tell you how to do that in a second. But thanks for jumping
Johnny.
on
We'll
with
talk
us.
to you again, Johnny, soon. And Rob and Brenden, talk to you later.
All right. See ya.
Johnny, that's what's so much fun. That's why I love, and I know you've got a busy schedule, but I always tell you when you can be on, let us know. I know you kind of
that's increasing now, and thank you, by the way. So
yeah,
I appreciate
we
because
love
I love coming on your show. It's been way too long, and that's on me. I'm now affiliated too, by the way, and I'm happy about this with the Better Business Bureau. Not only coming on as a marketing partner, but I'm also affiliated with them. and working with them, and to, to get businesses accredited. I think that, since 2020, we don't know who we trust. I'm guarantee you, if you're like me, you're getting phone calls every day with all these scams.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So no matter where you are, I would encourage you to go to bbb.org. And if you're a business, get accredited. That way you show us consumers where to go.
I go there all the time. That's funny. I literally
it is one of the top 10.
All the time.
Top 10 websites in the country.
You really should. Especially if you don't know the internet and you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where your money's going. I think there's an app, isn't there, Johnny? I thought there was, or they were talking.
Go to bbb.org. I am so lucky and fortunate that I'm on board with them and working with them. But no matter where you are in the country listening, you get affiliated, and if you're a business, make sure you get accredited, because it just shows the consumers that who they can go to trust. It's funny, before I got affiliated with them, I never really paid attention to this, but every commercial that I run for my show, somewhere in there's the word trust.
Yeah.
Trust has now become such a key word, and in our psyche, it's so important. By the way, your first guest, it was interesting. A couple of things stood out for me. Sam Pittman. I'm not, I've been to every media day since 2008. 2008, our morning show host, we had already had all the sponsorships sold. He quit. So my very first media days in 2008, it was a 3-day affair back then.
Yeah,
I literally
Alabama.
Yeah.
Right.
So I did a morning show from 6 to 9. I did the afternoon show from 4 to 7. And it was really bizarre because usually now coaches are down there. Maybe some coaches don't even go down to Radio Row, but the coaches at the most would be down there for 40 minutes or so. Yep, Tommy Tuberville lived for 3 days on Radio Row. He was down there. I mean, I'm not kidding. He was on my morning show. He was on the afternoon show. He was on again just because he was hanging out. And it's like, well, this is the Auburn head coach, and I'm doing a show in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm still getting him. So, and the other thing that really stood out for me in 2008, how it's different today. Nick Saban was so more accessible before he won his first national championship at Alabama. One of the things that he did in that first year, he went and visited and talked to all the high school coaches across the state of Alabama. Yeah. At Radio Row, he was down there. I had him on my show. I thought this was just the thing was going to happen all the time. I had him on my show at a Huntsville function. The very first week, I started doing sports talk radio. So I get Nick Saban on for 20 minutes. And then I get Nick Saban again, a couple of months later at SEC Media Days. I had to go from 2008 to 2019 before I got Nick Saban again on my show. And I was able to get him to laugh. And you know how I got him to laugh? I asked him this simple question. I said, what would Nick Saban today in 2019 as a head coach, what advice would he give Nick Saban, first-year head coach at Toledo in 1990? And he starts laughing. He says, run the spread. And that just tickled him to death, so.
Yeah. Well, I think people, the more accessible you are, people love it when coaches, that's what makes Sam Pittman. Everybody loves the guy.
I love Sam Pittman.
How can you not? It's just, nobody wants him to be gone. They just want to win.
I want him to win. I'm not an Arkansas fan, but I want him to win.
Yeah. Well, look, we talked to Urban Meyer during the football season. Buddy and I talk to him every Friday, and we have a little podcast called Best Fridays in Football. And it's my favorite time of the week, because I get to talk. I can ask him any question of any weird question that I have about anything. Like, how did you call this? Why did you do that? And he just answers it. And it's so great. Like every week I have 30 questions, and it's so fun to interview a former head coach.
Yeah, it is,
especially right after they're done, they're fresh. And especially if they're on TV, because they're analysts now and they're doing all these, so it really is my favorite thing to do and to listen to, by the way, Johnny. I listened to your stuff forever.
Thank you so much.
Great. And we were there, by the way, and I wasn't there in 2008 in Alabama, and that was and 09, and that's when Saban and I had our little elevator experience when I actually got into the elevator at the same time Nick Saban did.
You didn't get attacked?
I'm dressed in GatorCountry.com, head to toe, and he's not tall, and I'm 6'4". So I walk in, and I don't know how I just got into the entourage or whatever, but then I look down, and it's just like that really uncomfortable moment where I'm like, looked out. He looks at me. He looks up at me, and I looked at him. He's like, "Gators, huh?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And he was like, "Mm-hmm."
I mean,
And
I
he
guess
got
I
out
can
of the
tell-
elevator. That was the end of it. You know?
I can tell this story now, but honestly, after I don't know if it's happened after the first national championship at Alabama or what. But for example, at Radio Row, especially at the hotel in Hoover,
In Hoover.
when he went to the restroom, his security guy
Yeah.
would stand outside. Nobody, I mean, this thing would be big enough to, take with all the urinals, everything else, take care of a good, 10 people or so.
Mhm.
Nobody was allowed in when he
No.
was in there. So
Yeah. Well, think about that then. What was the hotel there? I forget where
The Winfrey.
Winfrey.
Think about
Although
that.
I think it's called something else now.
Yeah,
but the
but that
Winfrey.
event there now, which was a great event for years, but now we're going to Dallas, right? Like
I'm not
best
going.
of that-
I'm ending my streak after all these
What?
years.
Johnny,
Last
oh,
one,
God.
Johnny. Come on.
I'm not making it there, and it's the first time I'm missing one since 08. I mean,
Well,
I've been
if we
to
can
every
help
one since
you-
08.
If we can help give you some reports, we'll be glad to do it. You know that.
Thank
we're
you.
gonna be
Yeah,
there.
I just, for me, when I think about, because like last year, I was the only person other than the SEC network. I had 6 of the top 100 college football players in the country on my show.
Wow.
I was able to hang around and from Tennessee to all the Alabama guys, all the, ESPN ranked the top 100 players in the preseason, and I had 6 on my show. And so, Spencer Rattler, I mean, you name the quarterbacks, Tennessee's quarterback. So I was really blessed. But this year, knowing the focus with Oklahoma and Texas, I mean, I know that your first guest, Connor, was bringing up Texas. I did a thing. I haven't done it this year. It was last year or 2 years ago. Of the 42 representatives, remember, all 14 schools get to bring 3. So this is before Texas, obviously, and Oklahoma has joined the league. So of the 42 representatives at SEC Media Days, 33%, 14 were from the state of Texas. And if you recall, when Texas A&M joined the league, where all of a sudden we had these non-conference classics. Yeah, we always get one in Atlanta, but all of a sudden these schools were also LSU. All these schools were playing games in the state of Texas because they understand the importance of recruiting there. I'm going to be focused and see how recruiting changes now. We get Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma, how the top recruits of the state of Texas, where they go to play football.
Yeah, well, there's a thing called the hat trick. Terry Bowden used to talk
Mr.
about
Texas
that.
is playing at Florida. I mean, he got Lagway. We're just having that conversation. Doesn't mean to interrupt you, Rob, but I mean, I wanted to ask you, does that trail matter? Right, Johnny? Do you think that trail matters in the future? Now,
does.
and does Lagway become a Gator if UT or if the Horns or Longhorns are not in the SEC? Does he?
Well, and see, that's the other part too. Not only am I focused on because the state of Texas, you got to get, if you're in the SEC, you better have a solid recruiting plan as far as these recruits coming out of the state of Texas. Because if not, you're not going to win. You're not going to be a champion. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works. You got to do well in Texas, the state of Florida, and now nationwide, West Coast to East Coast. But I'm not just focused on the first choice with these guys. They sign and they're going to come to Auburn or Florida. I'm looking to see when things don't work out. One football, how do you satisfy everybody? I'm looking at their second choice, because then with the transfer portal, I'm interested to see where they go after their first decision, because that will be a key there as they're maturing in their college football experience. That's when you're getting a player already built to be successful behind somebody they can't beat out, but can be a starter somewhere else. That's also what I'm looking for.
It's going to be what a season we've got coming up. And before the portal, we're coming into October, will be 6 years of the portal. So it's, we got a lot of data we can see. But before that, 42% of quarterbacks ended up at a different school than where they signed out of high school. That was before the portal. So that number has only increased. I also want to say, looking at what's going on with media days, it's the number of, you get sound bites. And I talked to Joe Milton last year. One of the things I wanted to ask him about was, you're from Pahokee, Florida, down there in the muck. And I got him to talk about that, because anybody that knows anything about Lake Okeechobee and Clewiston and Belglade and Immokalee, which is where Edgar and James is from, you know, the muck. I mean, that's like saying you're from the Mississippi Delta. Tough, hard, farming, true grit people. And he took a lot of pride in saying, yeah, from a small town, we got one convenience store, you know, a small little town. But that's it's really cool when you get to talk to these guys and find out there's some really great stories out there. I mean, don't buy in to all the negativity that's out there, because there are so many great stories, and these people don't realize how many country folks and small towns there are in Florida. Man, I've been all over that state. Y'all, you know, you
Amen.
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 But you talk about some freaking awesome people. Sebring and Avon Park, and you get down there to Inverness, and that's what I love about what we get to do. And Johnny, you got to be coming back. You're one of those ones. My wife goes, "Where's Johnny Ballpark Franksman?" She goes, "I love that guy." She loves you when you come on, but you speak from the heart, and also, you know, you're a Knoll. Look, I'm Auburn. I'm married to a Vol. I got an Alabama daughter. And
I'm a
Auburn
Roll
kids.
Tide fan, married to an Auburn fan. You know, so
it's crazy. But that's what makes this league so much. Like I say, I couldn't do this show if I didn't have so much fun with everybody, because we're all in this thing. We're all in this thing together. But
well,
Johnny,
I know you're an Auburn
Just
fan.
so you know, this is where I live. So we'll talk about small towns. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey,
well, here's the thing. I want to tell this story too before I forget, and it relates to Auburn. Former All-American Bill Cody. In the year before Steve Spurrier's Heisman win, Auburn beats and upsets. I mean, Auburn was not having a good season. They upset the Florida Gators. Florida Gators had national championship aspirations in '65. So Bill Cody intercepts a pass and returns it for a touchdown. And his brother, David Cody, actually listens to my show in Huntsville.
He's watching right now. He just texted me.
David was telling me about the fact that later on, Steve Spurrier autographed a book to his brother saying, "To my best receiver, Steve Spurrier." But in my research on Bill Cody, I found it. Remember Tom Dempsey, who, when he set the record for the longest field goal in NFL history in 1970, 63 yards.
Though, right?
Bill Cody was on that play blocking for Tom Dempsey. He was on the line for the Saints. And so that's how strange when you're doing these things and doing research for a show, you see all these other interesting stories pop up in relations.
Question for you. I think the holder on that field goal was a guy named Jackie Burkett, the Bessemer Flash, played it all. I mean, I don't know why, but you're talking to a guy when I'm driving to Dallas Sunday for media days, I will be listening to all kind of historical stuff. And I think about, I tell you, I still remember 1977, the front cover of.
By the way, that's Dempsey's boot.
Wow,
God,
that's pretty
look
cool.
At that. That is
awesome.
Your
Your producer on top of things.
Oh,
I love that.
Listen,
it runs in the jeans. Runs in the jeans.
That is impressive.
You think about Bill Cody. Dave was telling me that Bill lived on like 2 or 3 doors down from Archie Manning in New Orleans, and the Mannings still live, I think, on St. Charles Place there in New Orleans. And when I go down to Drew, Mississippi, and I duck hunt down there, it's not too far from our farm. We have it in Lambert, and I go down there to Drew, and you look at these little towns. That's where these great people come from, man. I'm telling you, more people are going to start moving back into these small towns. And I got to tell you,
I'm looking from that. I'm thinking about that transition. Nashville,
Ocala, come on! If you can
I love
find it,
the
I'm
old
telling
Nashville. I have to be honest, great for visitors and tourists. The fact that on the 4th of July we've got our finales is usually longer than most people's entire fireworks display. But that is blossomed. It's doubled in size over the last 10 years. Like on Thursday, 350,000 plus. Look, when I was a kid, I was in DC.
We did drone show this year. We had a drone show for the first time.
Well,
that was incredible.
I was in DC when the Beach Boys performed in front of 600, 700,000, and I was like 15 feet from the stage. So as a younger person, I didn't mind huge crowds. Now there's nothing about hanging out with 300,000 plus that appeals to me. Just nothing about that.
Well, you know what's cool? I stopped off. We're going to wrap up. Earl, Arkansas is right outside of Memphis. Charlie Young. They came over, his family 80 plus years ago from China, and he has this Southern accent, and his wife's from Cleveland, Mississippi. They got more of a Southern accent than any of us combined. I go in there to get a sandwich, and on Fridays they do chicken fried rice and egg rolls, only one day a week. Everybody comes in there. I said, well, you don't have any left over from the day before. And they gave me a thing. I thought Audrey was going to eat the box it came in Saturday. But you talk about a guy, and he is Charlie Young. I go, you follow college football? He goes, damn right I do. Arkansas Razorbacks. He goes, Pig Suey. So that's what I love is take the camera and just talk to people. There's so many great stories out there. And Johnny, you are such a gift for finding these stories. And I watch you at media days. And it sucks you're not going to be there because
I know
we're the same age, but you're like a mentor to me because you've been doing it so long.
But you got a rolling cot. Put it in our room, and we'll do a show.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, you're going to be on with us next week. We'll get you on because we're going to be doing the show. But I watch how you approach people. And they come to you, and I think
you know the difference because like Brenden's 6'4", I am 5'9" on my best day, right? So nobody's petrified. I mean, like we were talking about Sam Pittman. Sam comes up out of nowhere, looks at my beautiful black shirt that I have, and he touches it. He rubs his hand on my shirt and goes, "Nice shirt. You're living right."
I remember that you had that shirt
that's
on
just
last
Sam
year.
Pittman. Yeah, that's
hilarious.
Sam Pittman. I mean, I bring that. I only wear that maybe twice a year, and one of them is SEC Media Days because I know it looks like something a Tim McGraw or a Blake Shelton or somebody like that would wear because I picked it up here in Nashville. It's one of those type of shirts that a country music artist would wear on stage. And I only wear it so it lasts. I only wear it a couple times a year. And SEC Media Days, I always will bring it out like that second day just for that wow factor for me because by the second day, you're already tired. So I'm looking for that extra boost. So I want to feel good by looking good.
Yeah,
that's right.
Johnny, tell them how they can follow you. And I'll say this too. I wear those Rock Mount shirts that Bob Dylan and Elvis and Ronald Reagan would wear. I get them at Hewlett and Dunn. They've got them for everything. But you're right. The way you watch Sam Pittman, I asked him last year. I said, Coach, I know this is a crazy question, but you always say after a game, they say, Coach, big win for the Razorbacks. How are you going to celebrate? He goes, well, I think I'm going to have me an old cold beer. I said, Coach, after saying that, have you ever had yourself a Hamm's beer? And he goes, man, I like me an old.
I see the sign.
He goes, I like me an old Hamm's beer. And he goes, man, you look like you got a good job. He goes, step it up a little bit. And I'm like, Hamm's is the beer of kings. Let me just remind you, born in the land of sky blue waters. But Johnny, let them know how they can follow you. But this is awesome. And let's do it again next week.
Before I do it too, a great show idea. I'm looking behind you and talking about stories, like the things that you have on your wall, tell stories. I mean, I look at mine. I mean, if you look around the other side, which I'm not going to show you because it's a little messy because I'm doing some reorganization, but like looking behind me, I have an autographed jersey from Mark Ingram. Over here, autograph from, where is my finger? Right there, Phil Niekro. Wayne Gretzky autograph, Dan Marino. All these footballs are autographed from the quarterbacks who led teams to national championships. But I see behind you and all the things that you have on your walls, there's stories there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key for what we do, whether it's SEC Media Days or just everyday life. And whether you're talking sports, news, culture, current events, it is the little details like that for me that tells the stories. Like I never write questions down when I'm interviewing anybody.
Neither do I.
I'm just listening, and that's the best. So when I have 14,000 guests, I am blessed because I get them going. Like yesterday when Richard Todd, one of the things I was talking about Richard Todd, that if he had lived in the era where we have internet and social media, I mean, this guy would have been a rock star, it factor. He was anyway, but even more so because he had that flowing blonde hair. I mean, he had the looks, as a guy in high school, whatever, he was the guy you're jealous of because he was a quarterback. He looked great, and he just had that. And so, and the fact that in 3 years, regular season record 32-1, 32-1 regular season record. The only one that they lost, opening game of 75, they lose to Missouri, and they could never get better than 3 at the end of the year. So
not shabby.
To follow me, the best way to do is 2 places. On Twitter, now X, which I hate. In fact, Twitter to me, I wish we would go back to the old Twitter. I don't like what they're doing. I don't know about for you guys, but every time, and I can say this, when you go on to Twitter/X, what do you see? You see meteorologists, you see and female meteorologists, you see female anchor people saying, "Hey, have a good morning." All right, they're doing something with the analogs of X and Twitter, which hurts us, and I hate that. Because I'm still hashtagging you to death. It doesn't work the same. But
no, it doesn't. I actually wiped it all out and started over when they became X because I knew it was going to be a mess.
Well, it is, but you can keep up with me there at BP Frank Show, and then you can follow me on Facebook. And if I have room, unfortunately, I'm at that age where I'm losing friends, 3 or 4 every couple of weeks. So you do the delete and add. So you can follow me there, period. Johnny Ballpark Franks. And that's where I keep up and tell you who's coming on the show. But every Monday in Huntsville, you can listen worldwide too on the internet at umpsports.com. But every Monday in Huntsville on the UMP, 7:30 a.m., 103.9 FM from 5 to 7 p.m. Central Time in the afternoon.
Great stuff, man. And look, take the back roads, people. You'll be surprised at what you see. The back roads are with that. And I think
who you can meet too.
Yeah, you'll meet the coolest people. And Tommy Tuberville, when I asked him to come on the show years back, he said, "You want me to come on every week?" I said, "Absolutely." He got real busy when he became a senator. But
do you need his number? I still got his number.
Yeah,
you want to call his cell phone number?
We'll get him on here soon. But the best thing about it is we get to do this every day. I'll be on tonight, the Buddy Martin Show, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We got a great show. Michael Zabala, Jake Wimberly, Dudley Dawson, Vince Ferrara. See you then. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you.
You bet.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.